Greetings all, back again. I've had questions from some of the viewers about how to sell produce. And, well, I'll admit, that really hasn't crossed my mind to do a show about in the past. I guess you could say it's probably because I'm a natural-born salesman. I never even think about this kind of stuff. You get something you want to get rid of, well, you got to get out, pound the pavement and sell it. That's that simple, folks. But I guess folks who didn't grow up in that tradition probably need a little coaching there, a little help. Where I was raised in Chicago was really a stone's throw from Maxwell Street. Is anybody familiar with that? Most of the guys who love Chicago blues would know what Maxwell Street was, because Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and those dudes used to even set up in the street over there and play. But now Maxwell Street would have been the Casbah of the Midwest. There really isn't much of any comparison to it anywhere else I've ever been in the country. It was just a gathering of people who were hustling everything. Yes, there were tailors sewing cheap suits. There were shoemakers. There were pawn shops. And then you had, the guys on the streets with the coats. They go, "Hey, you want to buy watches, rings?" They have it all on the inside of their jacket. It was all hot, or it was junk, one or the other. And but they'd come up or they'd pull their shirt sleeve up, and there'd be watches up. Buy a watch, It'd say Rolex, but it'd be misspelled, Oh yeah, I mean, they were hustling everything. They were selling their bodies. The gypsy women, man. Oh man, beware. Everything was for sale. Everything was for sale. And it just surrounded with that whole environment. As I grew up as a boy, it never even crossed my mind. It's, I guess, main reason that I don't worry about money. When I feel I don't have enough, I get out and make some more. That's what I've done my whole life. As a child, we even used to found ourselves a grappling hook that the cops must have been using to drag a lagoon, and they lost it. And we'd go out and we'd drag the lagoons in the city parks, and we'd grab whole rafts full of algae and drag them in, and they'd be full of bottles. We'd pull the bottles out. I had barkeeps that refused to take some of the bottles from us because they hadn't been used since 1932. But yeah, we'd cash in bottles. I even had a business selling pet mice. That was a failure. But yeah, I just grew up that way. So making money by producing a product and distributing it never really seemed to be much of a challenge. The way I see it is there are always people out there with their hands out holding dollar bills in their hot little hands, looking to find whatever it is that I have. The right person is looking for what I have. Now, I will admit I would generally tailor what I'm doing towards an area of the market where it didn't seem to be heavily covered. Yeah. If you're living next door to a guy who's raising 1,000 acres of cabbages, pretty good chance you probably don't want to do that. Well, for instance, here though in Hawaii, I know from working with Hawaii Food Basket, their community supported agriculture program, CSA program, things that they're just dying for. More broccoli. More broccoli. Bell peppers. Large fruited tomatoes. Boy, do they want them. I don't generally raise them because I have problems with the fruit flies on them here, but I remember selling the lady who did the CSA program 40 pounds of cherry tomatoes that I'd picked by hand. I will never do that again, trust me. But yeah, they're looking for cucumbers cucumbers. These are all things that are very, very difficult to raise here. The cucumber especially, because of the pickle worm. It'll just devastate your crops. You have to come up with a way of raising them. I have come up with a way that I can grow cucumbers. We are eating them daily right now. The same goes for tomatoes. They're a big problem. The Chinese fruit flies get into the fruit. The nematodes get into the roots. There's 250 different diseases that attack the vines and the foliage. And then the birds will eat them on top of it. So these are all problems that cause the shortages of these materials in the local marketplace. And even the cabbage, the lowly cabbage, is actually extensively used here. If you buy, chicken katsu or pork katsu or anything that's been fried on this island, ordinarily you're going to find it on a bed of cabbage, shredded. I had egg rolls last night at a local restaurant. Sure enough, they come to the table sitting on a whole bed of shredded cabbage. Why? Because it allows the grease to drip out, and instead of sitting on your plate or sitting in your go container in a big puddle, it falls down through the cabbage, and it looks real nice and neat. They do this all over the island. Very popular vegetable here. So just because it's common doesn't mean they always have it. The price on it here is usually very high. Yeah, cabbage prices, steep. You can make pretty good money on cabbage, actually. I know I sold a lot of it to the CSA program when I was doing that. But mostly, when trying to sell something you're producing, the technique is you got to get out there and you got to beat the bushes. There is not a lot to this, frankly. It just isn't. You want to have samples, okay? You want to show people what you're producing. You want to have a pretty good supply and maybe consistent sort of supply. That really helps. Yeah, so when you start to supply something to a customer and they like it, well, they're going to want more. Well, if all you got is 20 heads of cabbage and that's that, and you won't have 20 more for 6 months, not a good way to start a business. Yeah, you want to have something staged out there. So it needs to be something that the market is desiring. It also should be something that you can produce in significant quantity here. And before you get going at this, you really need to have pretty good quantity so that you can back up your words. When you go in and you tell the produce guy over here at KTA, look, I would really love to sell you my tomatoes. They're organic. They are beautiful. Look at these babies. Okay. But you don't want to just say, well, I'm going to sell you a batch of tomatoes, 2 bushels once, and that's it. It's over. No, if he likes them and got a good price on those tomatoes for him, well, he's going to want them all the time. Yeah, they sell tomatoes every day at the store here. And so if all you can produce is just a small amount and it's going to be a short-term thing, going to stores to try to supply is probably not a good plan. Now, sometimes the folks who do community-supported agriculture here, where they'll do these baskets weekly, they're more flexible. Yeah, a lot of times they would take whatever it was that I had that was good, that I could supply, that would go into the basket that week. Gives variety. So that's a place where smaller quantities can work. But if you don't start the CSA program yourself, then you have to become part of one that's already pre-existing. I have in the past. The Hawaii Food Basket has a CSA program. You go in, talk to those people, and set up an appointment. Bring the lady that does the CSA deliveries out to the farm. That's my contact here used to come by my place once a week and actually pick the stuff up. I would ordinarily have it all ready or cleaned up, in boxes and bags and ready to put on her truck and sell. So she'd come by and she'd pick the stuff up and carry it out of here. Now, I don't like traveling around the countryside, moving things, taking things to markets and so on. None of this is part of what I want out of life. I like being here on the farm, working with the stuff. And so the way I generally work my business, and that's because I can, I tell everybody, you come here to get it. I don't go to you. Now, I can get away with that. And I guess if you set yourself up that way, it works. It's worked for me. They all come here. I don't go there. But most people go there. That's the norm. Now, I had questions about the farmer's market, and there's, generally speaking, no, the hoops for the farmer's market are pretty small. You have to pay for the spot. I don't know what the current cost is. Usually these spots are like $40, So you pay for a spot, and then it's up to you what you're going to do with the spot. Now, I haven't used the Hawaii farmers market system, so I don't know all their requirements. You'd have to check with that. But in California, when I was raising nursery stock and selling it in farmers markets, well, the county would come down and inspect my stock and would also certify for the market that the stock was being grown on the farm where I was at and not being just bought in from somewhere. That is generally one of the requirements they put up to people, that the produce or whatever it is supposed to be local production and technically your production, so that the people that are standing in the booth, if they aren't the farmer himself, that they're the farmer's helper, the farmer's wife, somebody connected to the operation. It should be. Now, I know that isn't what always happens. I definitely see produce that's been brought onto the island from the mainland. When I see big sacks of garlic, for instance, they don't raise that here. When I see, sacks of spuds, they're not being raised here. Most of them, anyway, aren't. There's a few spots here and there under the right climatic and soil conditions where a potato will grow, but by and large, they don't grow here. So when you see them at the market, they brought them in from Washington or California or something. If you look hard at the containers, you'll ordinarily see someplace off island. On the other hand, all the rambutans, most of the apple bananas, and 100% of the papayas are all grown right here. So, having something that is difficult for people to find usually is a good way to start a sale. On the other hand, having something at a better value than the next guy. If you're at the farmer's market, I don't know exactly how they set their prices over there, but you certainly can figure it out by walking around the market once, that the prices seem to raise and lower pretty uniformly across those markets. So everybody's looking at everybody else's table when it comes to how they're pricing things. So if everybody's got their rambutans for $2.50 a pound, and yours are $2, and they look pretty darn good, you'll probably sell well. On the other hand, if yours are $2 and they look kind of shaky, well, maybe better make them $1. You might get rid of them. I usually am not going to chance some shaky-looking produce at a slightly lower price. I'll pay the higher price to make sure I get the good stuff. That's me. So, it really has to do with you. It has to do with your line of gab. What's your sales pitch? Are you good at talking other people into wanting what you have? That's a skill. Not everybody's good at it. Okay, and that is an important thing. And maybe if you're farming and you want to start selling around here, but you're not at all good at confronting people. You're nervous, you're scared to represent yourself and so on. This is very common, lack of self-confidence. Maybe you need to find somebody to do the talking for you who is confident. In the nursery industry, for instance, and in many other industries, the growers themselves generally do not go to the retail level. They have somebody in between they hire as a sales rep who comes around and does the talking for them. These are usually people that may not grow plants very well, but they can be really good at talking. And I don't want to give away all the secrets, but there are times where I figure I have skills, all right? I'm pretty good at what I do. My knowledge level is adequate, generally better than average. I have quite a bit of understanding about what I'm doing here, but the rest of it, carnival sideshow stuff, man, it's circus. P.T. Barnum. I think of P.T. Barnum frequently when I'm promoting things. It's a show, okay? You're creating a show. You're creating an environment where you're hawking your wares. I remember a Greek farmer in California at our local farmers market who he liked to grow Thompson seedless grapes without gibberellins. So he didn't have the great big fat grapes that taste like nothing. He had the small sweet grapes, which were really good because he didn't increase the size artificially by using chemicals. Well, he used to stand out there in the farmer's market in front of his table holding up them grapes, and he'd just be hawking them going, "Try some, taste my grapes, the best grapes in the market." It's this kind of stuff. And then you go by, and you pull some grapes off, pop them in your mouth. Oh, man, is that good. That is so good. I never tasted a Thompson that good. Well, yeah, I bought his grapes. And he was very aggressive about letting people know that his grapes were superior. He's in the middle of a market with 20 other people all selling grapes. It was California, but his grapes were standing in front of the table, hollering at the crowd and putting themselves in everybody's mouth. This is what it takes, you see, to make a good sale sometimes. You have to be a little bit better at selling things than the next guy. What you have might be identical to what the next guy's got, but your presentation. And you develop relationships. If you're... I've worked with supermarket produce departments in the past, where I've sold them product. And in a case like that, you just go and you cultivate the produce manager. You go in, you start talking to the guy, you get into some conversations, you tell him what you're all about, let him know what you think you'd like to try to do, sell him some stuff, and then if you don't have it with you at the time to display, you bring it back and you let this guy try the stuff. You show it to him, maybe even give him a first case of whatever it is for nothing. Put it on the table and see how it goes. And if it goes well, he's going to want another case and he's going to pay for it. You got to cultivate a relationship. That helps a lot. With the farmer's market, well, you're cultivating the relationships usually directly with the customers. As long as you don't get in Dutch with the guys who manage the market, it's mostly going to be those individuals who week after week are going to come by and they're going to go, "Oh, it's you. You had this stuff last week. Do you still like that. You cultivate the relationship that way. On the other hand, some of the most profitable sales you can get into here in Hawaii are the restaurants. Yeah, if you can get the guy that's supplying the better restaurants around here, boy, that's a gig. I'm telling you, it's a good one because the restaurants pay the highest price. They need to have consistent supply and consistent quality, and the better restaurants with chefs have to have the best quality. Okay. And so if you can do that, if you can produce extremely high quality material, and the material is available on a steady basis, and it's the type of material that the chef wants, it's good money, man. That's a good business. Okay. And, with a restaurant, it is possible to be doing a single item. It is possible. But usually you're far better off if you're supplying a palette of different things that the chef is going to want. So he's got combinations of different materials that you have. It's possible to grow watercress. Park on the roadside over here and sell it. They do it. Or go to the farmer's market, set up a booth selling nothing but watercress. Watercress is hard enough to find and popular enough here. It is possible to make a business on that one item. Something that's almost impossible to find here, and that's fresh wasabi. Anybody who thinks they're skilled enough to be able to start producing consistent crops of that stuff, boy, I tell you, the better sushi makers around here, you can interest them in that stuff. And once they become familiar with what you have, it'll sell. I don't know, has anybody out there ever eaten fresh wasabi? The majority of us only have that powdered junk or the stuff in the tube that comes off the store shelves. There's no comparison. That actually usually isn't really wasabi. It's generally adulterated with horseradish. Boy, fresh wasabi is something else. It's a sweet, delicious, spicy, marvelous thing. So the restaurants are difficult, but they're good money. And if you get in with the chef and cultivate the relationship again, so he trusts you, he knows you can produce, and you're going to get him the good stuff. You got a friend for life. Yeah, he will. He'll be calling you all the time, provided that you can supply what he needs. If you can only do it for a month, a year, and then that's it, you're probably not going to get a call back. He's going to look for people that he can get this stuff every week when he needs it. Being able to supply consistent is very important when it comes to restaurants. Fairly important when it comes to dealing through stores. Not quite as important when you're at the farmer's market. At the farmer's market, I suppose you could set up every week with a completely different table of material, and as long as what was on that table was good quality, one week it was all papayas, the next week it's all apple bananas, the week after that it's all mangosteens or all avocados, you'll do okay. I'll walk up to a table, it's nothing but papayas, and start picking through them. But it's really just, it's in your panache, man. It's like, what is your acumen when it comes to being able to promote what it is that you have to another person and leave them feeling like they need to have it? It helps to develop a reputation. Folks contact me because they figure I have knowledge, I have good stuff, and so on. The plants in my nursery grow well. People who've used them tell me that. They tell other people that. And so I get business in the nursery because of a reputation that was based on quality. Now, I don't know if my plants are all that much better than everybody else's, but I can talk a good story. And talking a good story is more than half of being a good salesperson. And you can be a wonderful farmer, but if you're not practiced at selling, and if you don't have skills and knowledge at running business and understand sales and business, well, you may not do so well as a farmer. See, a lot of the farmers in America today, they sell mostly to monopolies that are corporate agriculture. So that's fairly easy. You haul the corn down to the local grain silo and you sell it all to, well, that's generally the kind of farming where you'll see 1,000 farms in a row that are nothing but corn in Iowa, and grain silos along the railroad tracks where everybody grows the same crop, and the crop goes to one or two very, very large entities that deal with grains. It's fairly reliable. It's not at all very profitable. These guys need to have thousands of acres sometimes to even be able to pay the bank loans. So dealing with that corporate industry thing is not really the best way. I've known guys back in Wisconsin who did cranberries. My neighbors were cranberry farmers. Again, that's corporate monopoly. Ocean Spray pretty much owns 90-some% of all the cranberries in the United States of America, and they can't grow them out here, so they had the guavas. It's monopolized. You're stuck. Your cranberries all go into one point, and you're going to get the price that they're dictating to you. Whereas when you're selling more independently and you're not dealing with corporate entities, well, you're going to have to compete usually, but competition can have to do with the quality of what you're producing. So a higher quality piece generally is worth more money. It depends on your market. Yeah, the restaurant's going to pay you more than the farmer's market will. They go to a farmer's market, they're usually expecting a deal. They don't always get it, but that's kind of typical. So there's a little bit on sales, folks. I'm sure there's so much more that I haven't thought of, because this is a knee-jerk, it's second nature for me. I really don't give it too much consideration. I just get about it and do it. So I hope that helps. Aloha. Y'all have a great day.